to study the Dahara Sutta, the discourse on the young. This is from S3.1. This is the first sutta in chapter 3 of the Samyutta. And this is found in chapter 11 of Sutta Discovery 142, or SD 42.11. This sutta records a very early period in the life of the Buddha. As the title suggests, when he was very young. We might even surmise that this is a time when he first met the king Pasenadi. Pasenadi also was of the same age as the Buddha. So you have this young king meeting the young Buddha. And perhaps because of this conversation, they became good friends after that. They became lifelong friends, right to the end. When the king was 80 years old, the Buddha also was 80 years old. But the king passed away slightly earlier than the Buddha. So let us go straight to the sutta, because it's quite straightforward sutta. It's a very short sutta, but well worth reflecting. Even though suttas may be short and simple, if you reflect carefully and you put together all the teachings you have learned, you find they point to something much deeper, something very helpful to us in our personal practice. The discourse on the young, S3.1. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Blessed One was staying in Anathapindika's park in Jeta's Grove near Savatthi. Then the Raja Pasenadi of Kosala approached the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and friendly exchange was concluded, he sat down at one side. Sitting thus at one side, the Raja Pasenadi of Kosala said this to the Blessed One. Thus our master Gautama, too, claimed that he has fully awakened to the peerless full self-awakening. So here it's obvious that the king is not really sure whether the Buddha is awakened or not. So he's asked the Buddha, are you fully awakened? You realize the truth? So the idea of awakening is quite well known, quite common in those days, if you like. It's just a general term meaning awaken, meaning realize the truth which liberates us from suffering or give us true knowledge. There are many other teachers who are much older than the Buddha who claim to be awakened. In other words, there are the 6 famous teachers, for example, they're much older than the Buddha. So, and the kings, especially King Pasenadi, he knows all these 6 teachers, for example. So, and he hears about the Buddha was very young. So he's wondering whether he's really awakened. So the kings those days, it's very important for them to know people, and especially to know religious people, because religious people have great influence. So, as you know, kings, they also need support of the people. So it's important for them to know those who have influence on other people, like religious teachers. All right, so now then the Buddha replies. The Buddha says, in verse 4, Maharaja, one speaking rightly of this would speak of me as one who has fully awakened to the peerless full awakening. For I, Maharaja, am one of those who has fully awakened to the peerless full self-awakening. Notice how the Buddha answers. He says, I am one who has fully awakened. Although it doesn't say it's the only one, because we know He's the only Buddha in this dispensation, in this part of our history. But we also know later on in other parts of the sutta, especially in the commentaries, the Buddha would say there are other Buddhas. Tradition would tell us there are many other Buddhas in the past. But he is the present one, the historical Buddha who is fully awakened. There is no one else. Right, then the king responds, the king says, but Master Gautama, there are recluses and Brahmins, Sangha leaders, group leaders, teachers of groups, knowledgeable, famous, forward makers or saviors, regarded as holy men by the masses. That is to say, Puran and Kassapa, Makkaligosara, Nikanta Nataputta, Sanjaya Velataputta, Pakuda Kachayana, and Ajita Kesakambala. They too claim that they have fully awakened to the peerless full self-awakening. But why Master Gautama is still young and only newly gone forth? Right, so here we have the king saying that there are so many other famous teachers who are quite old, well known, they have big groups. And those are the 6 names I mentioned here. These 6 teachers are well known and they are mentioned in some detail. The teachings are mentioned in some detail. For example, in the second discourse of the Digha Nikaya, D number 2, called Samanya Parasutta. So, if you want details, you can look into the sutta, which we have already translated. And secondly, the other teachers, they have big followings, right? Whereas this young Buddha, he's very new, there's not many followers. So the king is wondering, how can you be so young and still claim that you're already awakened? So in a sense that the king is curious, right? He's not being cynical, he's curious. Then this is the Buddha's reply. These 4 Maharaja should not be despised as being young, should not be disparaged as being young. What are the 4? 4 kinds of people we should not look down because they are young. A warrior, a noble or a warrior, Maharaja, that's a Kshatriya, should not be despised as being young, should not be disparaged as being young. A snake, Maharaja, should not be despised as being young, should not be disparaged as being young. Fire, Maharaja, should not be despised as being young, should not be disparaged as being young. A monk, Maharaja, should not be despised as being young, should not be disparaged as being young. These 4 Maharaja should not be despised as being young, should not be disparaged as being young. Okay, so here we see, that's all that the Buddha said, right? So in other words, the teacher has to explain this in more details. Of course, you find that there's a verse which follows. Right? The verse also explains what is meant here. But let me briefly explain it first before we go to the verses, right? Why should we not despise a noble like a Kshatriya or a warrior? Let's say it's a little child, or royalty if you like. You can also translate this noble Kshatriya as royalty. Let's say a young prince, so the young prince maybe is still playing with toys, running up and down and drooling and so on. But people still respect this young prince because when he grows up, he will become a powerful king, for example, a well-known person. So in the Buddha's time, in the days when there were kings, you would want to be remembered as someone who has hurt or harmed or looked down on the young prince. So this is one. This is not an especially spiritual thing, but it's a social thing. The snake also, right? we think that, oh, it's just a small snake. But when the snake becomes big, it becomes poisonous and dangerous. The next thing is a fire, right? We think that, oh, it's just a small fire. But the small fire can grow, it can spread and burn down the whole building, the whole village. So these three are like analogies, they're like comparisons, right? So the Buddha said, similarly, you should not look at a young monk, okay? Because this monk, if he practices well, he become awakened and become a great teacher. In fact, in the case of a monk, if he really practices well, he keeps to all the rules, he doesn't become a career monk, he doesn't deal with money, he keeps to all the precepts properly, he practices the Dharma, he meditates. Then as you grow older, he will grow in wisdom. Otherwise, when you grow old, look back, you will regret. All that he does is just live just like another layman. So the idea of being a monk is to be calmer and more peaceful, to practice meditation, and become a wise teacher, and become enlightened, become awakened in this life itself. So as the monk grows older, all these wonderful things also grow with him, in other words. So a young monk should not be looked down in that way. The Blessed One said this. The Blessed One, having said this, the teacher, the Sugata, further said this. So now, this is the style of like the Udana and the Itivuttaka also, where you have a verse closing the teachings. And in this case also, like in the Itivuttaka, the verses actually elaborate on what is briefly spoken in prose. Katiyang jati sampannang abhijatang yasasinang daharoti navajaneya nanang paribhave naro. A kshatriya, or noble accomplished by birth, high-born of great fame, should not be looked down upon as young. No man should disparage him. Tanang hiso manu jindo Rajang dandana katiyo so kuddho raja dandena tasming pakamate busang tasmatang parivajjaya rakhanji vitang atano. For it's possible that he'd be lord of men, a kshatriya who gains kingship. An angry king with royal punishment harshly punishes him. Therefore, one would avoid it, cutting one's own life. So here, when the Buddha says this, of course, he's indirectly telling the young king, right? He's young, surely he doesn't want anyone to despise him because he will one day become older, more powerful. So he knows what the Buddha is trying to say. Game wa yadi wa ranye yatta passe bujangamang Daharoti na vajaneya nanang parabhavenaro. Whether in a village or in a forest, whether one sees a young serpent, wherever one sees a young serpent, look not down on it as one young. No man should disparage it. Ucca vachehi vanehi urago charati tejasi so asacca dang se balang narang naring cha ekada tasmatang parivajjaya rakkang jivitang attano. In various shapes, the belly goer is the snake, goes with mighty fire. Fire is the venom. Yeah? He sets on and stings the fool, man or woman, all the same. Therefore, one would avoid it, cutting one's own life. Next verse. Pahuta pakkang jalinang pavakang kanha vattaning daharoti navajjaneya nanang paribhavenaro. The fire is a great devourer, leaving only a black trail where it goes. Look not down on the young. A man should not disparage him. Right? So, fire can grow and destroy everything. Lata hi so upadanang maha utwana pavaka soha sajja dahi bhavam narang narinja ekada tasmatang parivajjaya rakhang jivitang atano. For when it gains fuel, when you add wood to the fire, for example, becoming a great bright blaze, it might hit and burn the fool, a man or a woman, all the same. Therefore, one would avoid it, cutting one's own life. Wanang yadagi dahati bhavako kanravatani jayanti tata paroha ahoratanang achayi. A forest burned down by fire, the bright flame leaves but a black trail. There should sprout forth in the passing of day and night, right? So you think of the forest fire in California, for example. It's really huge, or even in Australia, it really spreads all over the place. But the strange thing is, after all the forest has burned down, you find these new plants start growing. So it's like a way of filtering the species. The good ones will survive. Right? So those seeds that can survive the heat, they will grow. And these new plants will grow stronger than the previous ones. Yanjako sila sampanno bhikkhu dahati tejasa natassa putta pasavo dayada vindare dhanang anapacha adayada talavatu bhavantite. But if he is steeped in moral goodness, a monk who burns with majesty, in other words, a monk who is morally upright, good, for that one, nor son, nor cattle, nor heir to wealth would find. Triless, airless, they are but pamirastans. That is a kind of warning, actually. The Buddha is saying we should not create bad karma. I mean, if we talk bad, look down on a monk who is virtuous but he's young, our karma, maybe we might have no children because of that, because of our negative attitude. Because we look down on renunciation, it's a kind of we can take this in a humorous way, as it were, because as you know, for the king, it's very important for him to have an heir, a prince, to take over his kingdom. So if there's no children, it would be very difficult for him. If he's terrified of it, his line will die. Right? So, in other words, it's very important for him to show respect to everyone, so that they will support him. And through that support, he will feel peaceful, and he's able to raise his children in peace, and so on. Tasma hi pandito poso sampasangatanatano pujangamang pavakancha katiyancha yasanino vikuncha sila sampannang samadeva samachareti. Therefore, a wise man, seeing his own good and seeing the belly crawler as a bright flame, a kshatriya of great fame, or a monk steeped in moral goodness, would indeed rightly hold himself. So this is a concluding verse. Right? We should not look down on the kshatriya, or a fire snake, or a monk when they're young. When this was said, Pasenadi the Raja of Kosala said this, excellent Bhante, excellent Bhante. I notice he calls the Buddha Bhante, sir. So he has this connection, this respect for the Buddha. Just as if one were to place upright what had been overturned, were to reveal what was hidden, were to show the way to one who was lost, or were to hold up a lamp in the dark, so that those with eyes could see forms. In the same way, in numerous ways, has the Dharma been made known by the Blessed One. I go to Master Gotama for refuge, to the Dharma, and to the community of monks. May the Blessed One remember me as a lay follower who has gone forth for refuge from this day forth for life. In the sutta ends there. But here we can reflect further on the nature of youth. Here we have like a Kshatriya, a snake, fire, and a monk. On a spiritual level, we can say being young refers to being unawakened, not yet attain even stream winning. So we should not look down on people even when they have not attained sainthood yet. We should not look down on ourselves because we have not attained any level of liberation yet. We should not say, oh, I will never be able to awaken in this life for this reason, that reason. We really look at the negative aspects. In fact, if we go through more suffering, more challenges, you find, if you are mindful, there's more things to learn from all these experiences than if your life was very plain, nothing happens, you go to temple every week, and then you go home, nothing happens. But if you mess your lives up, you make mistakes, you suffer great losses, or you might even suffer some painful sickness, and so on and so forth. All these challenges that you face in life, or maybe you lack certain abilities that you desire. These are great challenges that you have. And because of these challenges, because of all this suffering, you begin to learn a lot about yourself, how you have to put an extra effort and so on. At first you may seem bitter, you may be unhappy, but as you mature, you find that there's nothing to be sad or angry about or disappointed with, because everybody, when they are born, even those we regard as better than us or the best in society, they have some kind of handicap, they have some kind of difficulties, either seen or unseen, either physical or mental. But if we confront all these difficulties and shortcomings that we have and understand why this happens and how to overcome them and make that effort, we will discover a lot of wonderful things about ourselves. And the most important thing we have done is we have not looked down upon ourselves, because we are still undeveloped, we're still young, spiritually speaking. So as long as we are not awakened, the mind remains a child, so to speak. The body grows old, but the mind does not age. The mind still is childish, still young. So when we meditate, we mature the mind. When we awaken, the mind becomes more mature, in other words. So the Arhat is the most mature of beings, if you like. The Buddha is the wisest, the most mature of beings. He's also an Arhat. So this is a deeper meaning of the word respecting the young. It means respecting yourself, don't look down on your present state. You can become awakened, you can become a streamer, you can go on to awaken even in this life itself. You have to make the effort. So here's the first sutta.